Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large, coming at you on video and audio on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and here on YouTube. If you're watching, you can see that I have guest Anthony Magnabosco with me this week. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
I am excellent. How are you?
I'm doing so good. Thank you. Having a great summer.
Excellent. Yeah, we're rolling right into it. So we're gonna talk about some interesting things. People can see here from the labeling that you are a street epistemologist.
I guess, yeah, you can call me that. I mean, I see myself
Yeah.
as an atheist, agnostic, a dad, a non-believer
Yep.
who likes to go out and perform street epistemology. So I do get that label, but I'm so much more than just that. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of my claim to fame, I guess, is I'm the guy that goes out with the camera and talks to people using Boghossian's street epistemology, hence the name or the label, the street epistemologist. So yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that is one aspect that we will definitely be talking about today, and let's just get that word out of the way. Let's just dive right into this. No reason to pussyfoot around here. So, what is epistemology? That is a difficult, weird, academic word. What does it mean?
So epistemology is the study of knowledge, or how people come to know the things that they know. And an epistemologist, I suppose, is kind of leveraging off of Peter Boghossian's book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, where he is calling for people to go out on the street, or at the very least, engage with people face to face or over social media, to ask questions to determine how the person that you're speaking with concluded how they know what they claim to know. And that's really all it is. It's a very fancy word, but it's just a method for determining the reliability of methods that people are using to form their beliefs.
Okay, great. So it's really, when you're doing this, it is not, you go out on the street and you talk to people.
Right. I do, yeah.
I mean, really, that's what we're talking about. And it's not confrontational, or at least not purposely so, in terms of you're not antagonistically approaching them and saying, what the hell is wrong with you that you believe in God? Or how did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and suddenly have this idea that there's a sky daddy? That's not your approach. Is that right?
That's right. My approach is more of a respectful inquiry, to listen very carefully to what a person believes. I want to understand what they believe, their justifications for it, and how they can be so sure that it's true. And a lot of it is reflective listening. They tell me what they are believing. I repeat it back to them for clarity. That is a desirable thing that you'd want to have in your conversation partner. So that tends to open up a person even more. And before you know it, people are revealing some very intimate details about their life and why they believe and doubts that they've had. And it's such an incredible approach. It's so much different than the typical debate or arguing that you see between God believers and atheists online. I'm sure everyone in your audience has probably watched those confrontational discussions that get way out of hand, and both parties end up walking away angry. They haven't learned much. They have a lower opinion of the person that they were speaking to. And it's just the complete opposite, it seems, when we're using this different approach.
Yeah, and it is something interesting to watch because it's not that heavy confrontational thing. I mean, I posted video last week about flat earthers, and that was, interesting because it escalated from the very first comment that the flat earthers would come back to me on. I mean, right away there was name calling. Right away there was I'm a retard. Right away I'm a globetard. That was an original one.
Oh, that's a new one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a globetard, right? I mean, just right away they come out punching, and of course, anyone's reaction to that, no matter how reasonable or critical thinking you're trying to be, or skeptical or whatever, but mannered or respectful you're trying to be, it's very hard to be that way when that's their opening salvo.
I understand, but you have to ask yourself, what is your goal? If your goal is to get a rise out of somebody, and that is funny to you, and you have your friends watching who are egging you on, and that's enjoyable, I can understand that approach. But if you are seriously wanting to help a person think about their belief, being aggressive, even if they were aggressive to you first, I understand. Like the reaction is, well, there's no way that I'm letting them get away by calling me a, what'd you say, a globetard? I
Yeah.
haven't heard that one. But what I found is ignoring the insults and focusing on the method that they're using to be so sure that it's true. If you can model the behavior that you would like them to give to you in return, if they're truly willing to talk to you, then I think that's the best approach. And if they value truth. There are some people that don't value truth, and they don't care about your opinion, and they have no intention of wanting to convince you. Those are much more difficult conversations. But if you're talking with a person who really wants to have the conversation and is willing to respect you in return, then I think there's no limit to how deep you can go with the conversation, and potentially even help a person become less confident in the belief that they're holding, even people who claim to be evidence-based, like flat earthers, for example.
Right. Well, it was interesting to see. I mean, it was really just a sort of a one-off sort of, toss it out there sort of video. I'm not going on some rampage against flat earthers. I was really pointing out some of the logical fallacies that exist. And really that was the exercise and the purpose of the video. But it was fascinating to me how within hours of posting, there were hundreds of comments, all of them, all but, I should say, out of hundreds of comments, within maybe 200 within the first 6 hours of the video going up, almost all but one were heavily antagonistic. Just coming out punching right from the start, and
Wow. So
and
it must have gained some traction in a community that is pro flat Earth, I suppose. Yeah, I think I would much rather have a conversation with somebody over Skype, like we're doing, or face to face is ideal, where you can see the person's face and the reactions and the body language, over a text-based, environment or a venue. Like the YouTube comments might be one of the worst places to have those talks. Not necessarily because it's harder to interact interpersonally, but because other people can jump in and egg you on. You could be having the most cordial conversation with somebody, and then someone just jumps in and completely derails the whole thing. So yeah, my preference would be to do it face to face, which is one of the reasons why I like to go out and just talk to people on the street. It's so much better.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think online forums are really an appropriate place for, a whole lot of debating, especially when it gets into that antagonistic mode, because you can't see the cues. You can't talk. You're not talking to the person directly. Often you don't even know who it is you're talking to. You have to establish some background with the person. Where is this person actually coming from? Their biases are not immediately obvious. Their education is not immediately obvious. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that are not there that make it very difficult. And if you start assuming things, you get into even more trouble. So, so online is probably the most difficult way to engage. Whereas in person, I think the conversations would be radically different, even with those same flat earthers, because people don't do things in person that they do online.
Yeah. How many videos of mine have you watched? I'm just curious.
I'd say about 6 or 7 encounters that you've done with people.
Oh, that's good. And that should give you a pretty good idea of what I do and what those talks end up usually revealing.
Well, I want to actually get into that. I brought up the flat earther thing just because it was an immediate example of like how not to do it right. And I was really trying to talk about from their approach, because you try to deal respectfully with these guys, and it's a losing proposition from word number one. They're not there to have their minds changed. They're not there to listen to you. They're there to simply beat you down with their fists, but virtual fists. But in terms of what you're doing, I wanted to contrast it with that, because what you're doing is literally the polar opposite of it. You are not coming in with you're wrong, I'm right and I'm going to now question you about how wrong you are.
Right. Exactly.
That is not what you're doing. And
Yeah.
in fact, I mean, not even, I was going to say maybe theoretically, but not even, I don't even want to put it that far out. You're having a conversation with people. I mean, if they presented to you reasons or evidence or whatever that you found compelling, you could come out of, hypothetically, I guess maybe, you could come out of one of these conversations with your mind changed.
Right. Yeah, that's how I try to approach these talks. Even when somebody says they believe in a God and they start going to prayers come true as the reason or faith, even though I've heard those arguments many, many times and they seem to be incredibly unreliable, I do try to remain open just in case that they have some good justification. They can explain it better or make a convincing argument for it, where I should want to believe it. So yeah, I do try to be open to the possibility, and I try to be neutral, even though I don't think anybody can be entirely unbiased or neutral.
No, I
But
think that's
I do
impossible as
try
a
to.
human.
And what's
Yeah.
really cool is like at the end of a lot of talks, there was a recent one with a woman named Amy, I think, who said, I have to just tell you, I don't know where you stand on this issue of the God existing or not, or truth being objective or subjective. And that was a compliment. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really want people to know where I stand because I don't want to influence them either way. But you're right,
Mm-hmm.
it is a conversation. And at some point, I think it would be rude not to tell them my position on things because they've been revealing so much. But I kind of like to wait till the end of it so I'm not influencing them. But I'm not shy to tell them my position on the same topic.
Good. Fair enough. Fair enough. And yeah, I agree with you. I think that there is something, and I'd like to ask you about this. It seems that there is something about a reasonable, respectful, tolerant approach that gains long-term respect. Whereas anything emotional, anything like when you come in, whether your fists are swinging or not, I mean, whether you come in, the more you come in with the emotion, the more interesting and maybe, I don't know what words to use, the more fodder it is for immediate views or something maybe on social media. But on a long term, the people who actually get respect and the people who actually are looked at and admired or emulated, or the people you want to actually like put some time into studying, are the ones who are non-violent, who are non-confrontational, who are tolerant, and who just want to rationally have discourse. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I do think that there's something to be said for a fist fight type of argument that gets millions of views because it's entertaining. But yes, for the participants, that's not benefiting anybody. Now, there might be somebody watching that argument and being compelled because the person who's making a weak argument loses and they get embarrassed, and that's the same argument that I would have used. Watching that could change your mind. But for the participants, yeah, no, I think it's very. I've seen videos just recently where atheists are arguing with Jehovah's Witnesses and making that theist feel stupid and dismissing them and laughing at them, and just the slightest mispronunciation of a word, they would just jump down their throat and call them on it. That's not doing anything for either of those two parties, but it might help people who are watching. Yeah, I've had people that I've run into years later. I've had people contact me over social media that I've talked to 2 years ago that have remembered a 5-minute talk, who now want to meet and continue the discussion. And I think that probably was largely because I treated them with respect and I listened to them, and I suppose modeled that behavior that they possibly went and thought about their belief on their own. So yeah, I think there is something to be said for the gentle approach. I mean, I can step it up if I need to. Don't get me wrong. You can look at the older videos where when I first went out and I was arguing with people, I didn't really quite grasp the concepts of street epistemology, where I was being a jerk. And gosh, even in those situations, I would run into that individual and he was still ready to battle with me, because I just treated him with disrespect. But yeah, it's interesting. I do think that the softer approach, the more respectful approach, has has a more long-lasting quality to it. I think that needs to be something that should be studied, but that's been my experience.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about it, is because I was wondering how much you have noticed that yourself over the years. How long have you been doing this?
It's been over 3 years now where I've strapped on a GoPro and I started talking to people on the street and uploading content. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't like every day for 3 years. I would take, months
Well,
off
of
here and
course,
there.
sure.
Life
So,
gets in the way.
yeah,
But
they don't manage to, throw some money your way after you're done talking to them. This isn't a
no,
way to make a living.
no. Yeah, I'm not getting rich.
Hey, that was a
I don't
great
make any. I don't make
conversation.
any
Here's a
money
little
doing
tip
this.
for you.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
I'm just doing this because I want to. Well, I want to. Initially, I wanted to test the claims in the book that the method was effective. And
Mm.
I think if you've watched as many videos as you have, or you watched 3 of my videos, I think
Hmm.
it should become pretty evident that something unique is happening here that doesn't usually happen in an argument. So that was my
Hmm.
first thing. And then the second thing that kind of dawned on me was there are so few examples of non-believers speaking to believers in a respectful manner. And I thought, hey, this could be a good way of modeling this approach for other non-believers, because I think it's easy for God believers, and I don't want to make this all about God believers and atheists, but I do think it's easier for God believers to dismiss atheists out of hand because they've seen so many aggressive debates and they think that that's how you're going to be to them. And if you can show that you're willing to have a respectful conversation, that's one less thing that they can point to dismiss you. And I think that's an important thing, so that they are having a chance to express the justifications for their belief with a non-believer.
I could not agree with you more. And I think it's crucially important. And I do think that part of the reason why atheists are at the lowest approval rating of on the religious spectrum, below Islamic terrorism,
Yeah.
is because of the hostile, antagonistic way they have presented themselves online. Even though most atheists I know aren't that way.
Yeah.
And I've referred to that as militant atheism on my channel in past videos, because I try to differentiate that from, say, what I would do or what you would do or what I've seen other atheists do. I ran across videos of street epistemology years ago when I first was coming into this, and I thought, that is amazing.
Hmm.
That's how this should look. And then I ran into the militant stuff, and I was like, whoa,
Oh, see, that's
you know,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
So that was another thing too, is it dawned on me that there may be people who are considering atheism. And
Hmm.
if all the examples that are out there are these battles and
Right.
just people,
Or
yeah,
these angry
right,
YouTubers who are
right.
like, "Rah, you believers are so
Yeah.
dumb." And you're just like, "Really? Who are you talking to?" Because it isn't the believers. They're not even watching you because they can't stand it. Right?
So now I do understand why a person would be an angry atheist. I was one. You
Mhm.
want to lash out at the people that are holding a belief that you now consider ridiculous
Mhm.
because you see yourself in that person. You see that terrified believer who just will go along with it because they were raised that way, and you just want to kick yourself when you see that in other people. So you end up kicking the other person. I mean,
Mhm.
I get that, but when you are ready to move beyond that phase, I think the street epistemology approach is there waiting for you. Almost weekly, several times a week, I get emails, messages over social media from people who are saying, I've discovered your videos and I used to be an angry atheist, and it's changing the way that I speak with believers. I'm more respectful to them, and my relationships are getting better because of that approach. And I have a better understanding of what they believe, and they spent way more time thinking about their belief than they ever had before when I was arguing with them. I mean, that blows my mind, and that's why I want to. When you offered for me to come on your show, Chris, I jumped at the chance because I want to get this message out to as many people as possible, because
Mhm.
I think it's amazing, and I don't want to like oversell it, but gosh, I just think it's really, really good. Everyone should be giving it a try.
Absolutely, and on that point again, I couldn't agree more. I think that if the target audience of your videos was just atheists, and if just atheists could learn to be a bit less militant and a little bit more tolerant and understanding of The fact that other people have beliefs and that those beliefs are important to them. They're not some, or maybe even if they are something that the person was forcefully indoctrinated with when they were 4 or 5 years old, that they have no logical reason to think or believe, that doesn't change the fact that they believe it. And they have what they think are very compelling and good reasons to think that way. And yelling at them and screaming at them or telling them how stupid they are, isn't a winning strategy. I took a lot of the early stuff that I saw with you guys, and I'm quite sure that it influenced the way that I went about doing my work with Scientology, right? Because tell me how different it is. It's no different at all. You're dealing with heavy cult belief. Belief is belief. And the indoctrination methods are the same or not, but they come to the same point, which is that the person has, however illogical, however unreasonable, and however full of holes and Swiss cheese their beliefs are, they still hold them. And you have to draw the person out. You have to get them talking. You have to get a conversation happening if you expect to address that with any hope of getting them to be willing to change their mind, because it's a misnomer to say you're changing their mind. They're changing their mind.
Yeah, you hit on something earlier where you were talking about this is a deeply held belief that's so tied to their identity. I think that's kind of what you were intimating. Yeah. And yeah, the deeper and more personal the belief is, the more tied to the sense of self I think a person makes it. And sure, a lot of people were indoctrinated. They were raised with these beliefs. It's part of who they are. So when you challenge their belief, it touches very close to home, and they see it as an attack on their character, on themselves.
That's right.
And I love SE, street epistemology, because it tends to frame the conversation of, I recognize that you're a human being and you have this belief that's in your mind. Let's pull it out, let's set it aside, and let's inspect it together and figure out how you realize that thing is actually true. And then when you're done, we'll pack it up, put it back in there if you want, but let's go ahead and examine it together. Let's make this a joint operation and look at this belief. And that tends to help a person step away from it and actively engage with you and examine it.
Exactly, because you're granting them some importance, and you're granting them the right to have their beliefs and then to expound on them.
Yeah, you're not dismissing them outright. You're not saying that's just ridiculous. Why do you think snakes talk?
Right.
I can go on and on about it.
Right. Exactly. Well, anyway, I think we've definitely made the point that respect is important in this, because it gets. And now let's actually get to, well, why? Why would that be important? Now, one reason it's important you've already said, and I don't want to gloss over this point. I want to bring this back up, because it's important in the world of deprogramming and cults and Scientology. Is, you said people have contacted you 2 years after you had a 5-minute conversation with them. This one person did that. That matters, because because I guarantee that person wouldn't be reaching out to somebody who just yelled and screamed at them about their beliefs, right? But they reached back to you because they knew you were somebody they could talk to, and you could have a rational, reasonable discourse with. That is so important in cult recovery, in getting people out of a cult situation. Because belief is belief, right? So I've preached to family and friends of cult members, be tolerant, be understanding, listen, don't talk.
And be accessible too.
Yes.
Be there for them when they need to move to the next phase of the conversation. When I first started off, I would end the talk and I would shake their hand and walk away, move on to somebody else. Now I start giving cards, and it's amazing how many people will email me later to say that they want to meet again, or they were thinking about the talk, or they no longer have that belief. It's really cool. So
wow. Yeah.
And try to be there for people, because this is not easy stuff. And a lot of people might say, well, you're just on your soapbox and you think that you have the truth and you're right. No, I want people to use this method for the beliefs that I think are true. because I want to believe true things. And if I'm discovering something if I find that I have something in here that's not true, then I want to get rid of that belief. It's the classic Matt Dillahunty, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that phrase. And that seems to dovetail very nicely with this method.
Excellent. Well, let's, okay, well, now that we made that point, because I wanted to go back on that for just a second, let's actually talk about what you've learned. I mean, how has this whole process, how has doing all of this changed you? What have you learned about, yourself and other people, and also, cognitive biases? I mean, how has this been a thing? What have you learned?
I've learned so much. I've learned so much. First, I think I've learned that very few people think about the beliefs that they have, even the deep ones that influence their actions. Very few people take time to question the beliefs that they just take for granted are true.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first things I learned. The other thing is people will get defensive, will quickly get defensive if you are aggressive with them. I know we kind of beat that to death. That was a big thing. If you can approach this as like I mentioned before, like a joint partnership, let's investigate this together, that really gets things off on the right foot. Boy, what else have I lost? Cognitive biases.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine this is something you
own.
pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have my own people. They're very. It's very tough to encourage a person to set aside their biases, and focus on if their belief is true or not. But it's important. I mean, I don't know if you can really critically look at the belief that you have if you aren't willing to at least make an attempt to set aside your biases.
Well, I would say it's impossible to be able to. Yeah, but just recognizing bias is itself a skill that is. I wish that alone were taught in school. Just not the fact that bias exists, but how do you spot your own biases? Because we have implicit and explicit biases, and explicit are fairly easy to see. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't like bananas. I know I don't like bananas, and that's okay, great. I got a thing against bananas. But spotting the racial or gender biases that we have that are instilled when we're 3 years old, that we never give a second thought to for the rest of our life. It's just sort of, well, of course that's how things are, and how would they be any other way?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really cool too. Like I'll put these videos on YouTube, and then people will point things out to me. Mm-hmm. For example, Anthony, you treated her differently. I think like you were much more friendly with her because she was kind of young and attractive, and you treated that older guy completely differently. So, or even the selection process, when I ask somebody if they want to talk, there are probably some biases at play just in my own interactions. But by posting these conversations online, people are bringing these things to my attention. So I'm more self-aware of it. And I'm trying to, I mean, there was even a thing that happened today where I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I probably asked those two people if they wanted to do an interview, and I didn't ask those two because of this other reason. So yeah, it's oh
yeah, your own biases come out, of course.
Oh, yeah. It's humbling. It's humbling when somebody calls you out on it, and you're like, I really can't defend that. I think I probably was biased there. Yeah. So
of course, I wanted to talk to the pretty young woman and ignore the grumpy old crotchety Archie Bunker type. Of course,
Exactly. But then then the next time it happens, you see the older gentleman, and you're like, I better ask him because I'm live streaming this, and people are going to call me on it if I don't. So it's so fascinating how, I mean, I've completely changed from going out and doing this. It's changed me in so many ways.
Awesome. Well, so now
better, I think.
Yeah, no, clearly, and that's not unexpected or unpredictable. What have you learned about how to change people's minds on subjects that they don't want to change their minds about?
Well, boy, I wish I had the answer to that. So many people don't change their minds, or many people are not willing to change their mind on something that they're absolutely convinced that it's true.
Mm-hmm.
They think that it's true. So why would I want to change my mind on something that I know that's true?
Mm-hmm.
That would be like me wanting to drink poison because I suddenly somebody's going to convince me that poison is good for me. No. So ideally, helping a person take one step away from being an ideologue, being dogmatic, and that goes for atheists and non-believers,
Yes, it
or
does.
any other belief for that matter.
Yep.
So almost fundamentally, I think this approach, one thing that it's shed light on is that being so steadfast in your belief is dangerous. If I'm absolutely convinced that there's no God and nothing's going to change my mind, that's just as dangerous as being 100% sure that your God exists and I'm not willing to change my mind. So being authentic, being sincere, being humble enough to change your mind, that's the type of goal that I think we should be striving for. If a person, those are the the toughest conversations for me, when a person is so arrogantly sure that they're right. It's hard for me, even as patient as I'm perceived to be, it is hard for me to deal with that. I want to immediately start needling at them and picking at them and perhaps even arguing with them. So, boy, that's a tough question, but I think it all comes down to being honest enough with yourself to recognize that you could possibly be mistaken. And if a person is being honest with you and themselves, and they're willing to change their mind, there's nothing stopping you from having a good conversation. And there are things that you can do to try to foster that. You can mimic that yourself. You can share a time that I was absolutely sure that popcorn was good for me, and I was eating it every night because I thought it was low calorie. And you can demonstrate, that's just a random example, but if you can demonstrate that there was something that I used to believe, I'd learned that I was mistaken, and now I don't believe it anymore, and I'm better for it, that might be what it would take to encourage that person to think, okay, maybe being so locked into this belief isn't the wisest thing to do.
Yeah, it's a tough call, or it can be. I guess it could be a tough call, I guess, from time to time, as to whether you're dealing with somebody who's really being open and honest with you, or somebody who is simply putting themselves on a soapbox. Oh, here's somebody who wants to listen to me while I get on my soapbox and yap at them. And they're not at all in an introspective or self-reflective or critical frame of mind. They're just, oh, you want to hear about God? Good, I'll tell you about God. And then, half an hour later, they're still talking about God. And you're like, wow, I kind of meant to do something a little different here.
Yeah. When people are on their soapbox, it's very tough if they're off of a script.
Yeah.
One suggestion might be just to move to a different venue and say, let's just go out to dinner and talk about this, rather than arguing in front of the courthouse where you're preaching.
Right. Let's actually, we probably should have done this at the beginning of the show. Why don't we do a very quick breakdown of what are the steps of this? How do you approach this?
Okay. Well, I prefer to go out in public and talk to strangers, but anybody can simply wait for a person to make a claim. That's the first thing. Someone needs to make a claim about reality before you can question it. So the claim needs to be stated, I suppose, is the first step. And then I would ask for clarification. So, for example, I had a conversation with a woman yesterday who said that, and I'm uploading it today, she said that she believes in horoscopes. Well, I asked her, tell me what a horoscope is exactly. Because sometimes just the act of explaining what a horoscope is, number one, they might realize that I don't even really understand what this is. It's called the illusion of explanatory depth. It's something Boghossian's going to be giving a talk on. People realize that, oh my gosh, I'm believing in something that I can't adequately explain just kind of to this stranger who's asking me. So, but also it's helpful for me to understand it so that I'm not asking questions about something completely different than what she believes. So getting clarification, understanding what the person believes is probably the next step. Definitions are important. Get those out of the way. I would also ask why they think that it's true. What are the justifications? Can you tell me your best reason why you think horoscopes are an accurate reflection of your work week, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to what they're saying, repeating it back. If you don't understand something, raise your hand and say, can you go back to that one thing? Because I wasn't quite sure what you were getting at there. That's huge because it's showing that you're listening, you respect it, respect them, and you're interested in what they're saying. Be open to what they're telling you. It's possible, I suppose, that horoscopes could be accurate. If they were, that would be a wonderful thing that I'd want to know about. It could help me plan for my week. So be open to it. And then I think probably the most important is asking the person how they determine that it's true. Take me through your process. Take me through the method that you're using to conclude that it's true. And is it testable? Is it repeatable? Are these things that are only happening to you? Why do you think that why do you think that this belief is true? You get some revealing answers. Sometimes people would say, like in the case of this horoscope thing, I think she said something like, there are just things that you just that you want to be true.
Wow, talk about an honest answer.
Yeah, boom, right there.
Like,
so then the conversation might shift into, is it wise for people to believe in things that they want to be true, or that should people be believing in things that we know to be true with a high degree of confidence? And that conversation played out in about 5 minutes, and then end on a good note. I gave her a card. I shook her hand. She said that she had a great talk, and there's a good chance we'll meet again, and maybe we can keep examining that belief and see how her test worked out, because she said that she would go out and test using a different zodiac sign next week and comparing it to the previous week.
Right.
Possibly maybe even move on to a different belief that she has, or encouraging her to learn the method so that she can question me on something that I think is true.
Mm-hmm. Nice. A little back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it would actually, wow. Actually, I had never even thought about that till you just said that. What a good idea it would be to teach believers street epistemology, because it would sort of loosen up their holding on to, just by the nature of what they're doing.
It's funny you say that, because there's a private street epistemology Facebook group. And up until this point, we've been restricting it to non-believers to come in and learn the method. And a few of our members have made the case of, if we really want this method to be taught to everybody, why are we restricting the God believers? And I think it would be very interesting to see a Jehovah's Witness learning street epistemology and then engaging with an atheist on it, or a Mormon or a Muslim. It's almost... It may even be somewhat of a Trojan horse type of situation, where if you teach a person street epistemology and they're being honest with themselves, I don't see how they would be able to maintain a supernatural belief. I really don't. Right. So I think it is in our best interest to teach other people this method, regardless of where you stand on any belief.
Exactly. It would at least it would bring them to a more honest place on it. I think. I think it would. I think that going through the process with other people would bring them to a point where they might not get to a place where they're going to go, well, look, I just don't believe this anymore. But they might get to a place, maybe it's a way station or whatever, maybe it's, whatever, but maybe it's a place of, well, look, I now know that the only reason I'm holding on to this is because I want to.
Yeah.
And that's an honest place to be.
Yeah, or a Muslim learns this and then has a conversation with a Christian, only to discover that the reasons that the Christian is giving are the exact same reasons that the Muslim would give.
That's right.
And that's got to be powerful. So yeah, this is a method that needs to be taught at a young age. It needs to be encouraged. We need to get funding behind this.
Yeah.
We're on the threshold. Like, this has been chugging along for 3 years since Boghossian's book in 2013. We're gaining momentum. People are learning about it. I think it's going to take some exposure. It's going to take a Ricky Gervais noticing it, or somebody beyond the atheist movement who's a newscaster or something that can do a piece on it and get the word out, because it does seem to be effective. I don't see any downside to it. It's an honest pursuit for the truth.
Right.
Why wouldn't we want that at a press conference when when reporters are talking to the press secretary. I mean, this is something that we need to have out there.
I agree with you completely. And of course, we both have to acknowledge that there are quite a few people out there who have all kinds of vested interests in not having this out there. Because,
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, we got to be blunt. There are people who know exactly what they're doing and are not at all interested in people being smarter, more rational, or, more tolerant.
Yeah, I don't want to go to all conspiracy theory here, but sometimes I
Oh,
wonder.
yeah, no.
There is a little bit of pushback from the apologist, the Christian apologist community, and these different religions. Every once in a while, they'll talk about street epistemology, but they don't get too into it. And I can't help but wonder if they're just ignoring it and laying low because they don't want to give it oxygen. They don't want to give it attention.
Oh, I'm sure that
Because
would be the case.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Because it's effective. I mean, we know it's
Yeah.
effective.
It appears to be.
Yeah.
I want to be careful. Like, I mean, I caution people to not draw too many conclusions from the examples that are popping up on YouTube. But damn, it's compelling. But it needs to be it needs to be studied.
Well, even if it's effective only in the degree that it plants seeds, even if it's effective only in the degree that it gets people thinking. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say, in 5 minutes you can change a person's entire belief system. No, of course you can't. I mean, come on, let's be real. But when they're calling you back 2 years later, you are getting things rattling around in that person's head that should be rattling around in their head, regardless of whether they ever change their mind or not. The fact that they're thinking more, that's a good thing.
How good would it be if a person they had a 5-minute conversation with me or somebody else that's using street epistemology, and 2 weeks later they run into somebody else who is asking these same types of questions.
Right.
To the point where this happens, where they start doing it themselves,
right.
Maybe on safer topics, not the ones that are tied to their identity. But I think over time, once you become familiar with this, you can't help but use it on yourself.
Right.
And it's a liberating thing. It's not a scary thing.
That's right. There's the whole point of critical thinking, or one of the whole points of critical thinking for me, and I will just stand by this all day long, is getting a person to the point where it's okay for them to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
These are important words.
That's a big one. That needs to be taught at a young age. We should embrace people who say, I don't know. And there's a fine line. Like, we jump on a lot of politicians when they change their mind and we call them a flip-flopper.
Right.
But you think about it, they may be coming around on an issue because they have new evidence. So we need to be careful and not just dismiss people because they have changed their mind on something. We need to celebrate it because they're showing maturity. They're showing growth.
That's right. It's a positive, not a negative. Yet it's treated in our culture, and I think probably most cultures, as a bad thing. And kids automatically react to it, tease people for it, make fun of it. Oh, you don't know the answer to the question the teacher asked. Right from the get-go, you're being ridiculed, and so you are taught through cultural bias and through just being raised that I don't know is a bad word. That's a bad phrase. You shouldn't be in that position. You're supposed to know.
And perhaps even worse, people will pretend that they know, or they'll make up an answer.
That's right.
And then they convince themselves that they do know, and that's just
right. That's where that leads. You just took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly where that leads. It leads to pretended knowledge, pretended certainty, and that's way worse.
Oh, it's dangerous because your map is not lining up with reality. And then we can find ourselves in a situation where we have leaders who are going off of maps that they want to be right, that they think are right, but are way, way, way off.
Way off, right?
And the stakes are too high to not want to try to promote this method. That's why I spend so much time going out and talking to people and putting up examples, because I want to encourage people to at least learn it. Mm-hmm. Even if you would never try it, learn what it is and tell other people about it, because the 10th person you tell might be a person that would actually want to go out and talk to people, or at the very least engage with them when they're on the airplane and somebody makes a claim, that they don't just say, oh, okay, that's nice, but they push back a little bit in a friendly manner and ask, what is it that you believe?
Right.
Why do you believe it? Can you tell me how you determine that that's true? Push back on it a little bit. This is a good thing. There's no excuse not to use it anymore because it's so polite.
Right, and it is just rational discourse. I mean, it's you're not trolling for an argument. When you're doing this right, that's not what you're trying to do.
Getting an argument is one of the worst things that you could do because you're not going to discover the foundation for their belief.
Right.
You're just throwing up your own obstacles to helping that person. So it takes time. I still struggle with it. I still want to argue with some people, but again, you have to remind yourself, if you want to help a person, being argumentative is going to slow things down. It's going to make things worse.
Right.
It's going to end the talk.
Right.
It's harmful to dialogue, not beneficial.
I think the analogy we drew when I had Peter on the show, it was a year or so ago, was you got this guy, anybody has a fortress of their mind, of and they got walls that defend their ideas. And the thing about street epistemology is it's not a frontal assault on their walls. It is asking them to open the gate and inviting you in.
And inspecting the foundation with them.
Right. Looking around.
Like,
exactly.
You've got all this structure here.
Yep.
Let's go down here and look. Let's see what's happening. That sounds weird. That looks weird when I do that. But let's look at the foundation of your belief. Let's inspect it. Let's see if it's really supportive of the structure that's above.
That's right. Or is it a house of cards? All right. Now let's get into the next question I have for you is, now what have you learned in terms of what's unsuccessful or that are negative strategies? We've definitely covered antagonism, not a good way to go. But what else has popped up over the last couple of years that you have learned, don't do this, in talking with somebody about deeply held beliefs or trying to evoke responses from them or trying to even engage them in the first place?
Okay, so the first thing is make sure that they're a willing participant.
Mm-hmm.
Don't force anyone to have a conversation that they don't want to have. Consent is a very big part of it. And use good judgment too. There may be a person who is very, very sick and they can go to the hospital at any time and they think that Jesus is their savior. I might back off of that one. If it's a kid that's making a claim, I might talk to the parents rather than the kid,
Mm-hmm.
So try to use some good judgment as far as who you're having these conversations with. If somebody says, I might harm somebody because of this belief, well, you might want to back off on that if they're serious. So that's probably the first thing.
Has that happened? Have you run into that?
I ran into a person who said that he would go on a shooting spree if he didn't hold his belief. But the 3 minutes of talk prior to that, he kept going on and on about how good he was to people and he would stop on the side of the road. So I pushed back when he said that if I didn't have this belief in Jesus, I would go on a shooting spree. And it turned out that he was just saying that. I think that was just a product of his upbringing, or he thought that was sort of the expected response that you should be giving when somebody asks you about your belief. So,
like it was such a strong moral center for him, it's what kept him in line. Was that what he was sort of implying?
I believe that was his argument.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that video is on my channel. It's called, I think his name is Greg. Why Be Good is the title of that one, if anyone wants to check it out. So, gosh, what else? Asking so many questions that you overwhelm your conversation partner is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. Go at the pace that they're comfortable with and meet a person where they're at. So if a person says, I realize that faith is unreliable, but I know that I have evidence for God, then you know where to meet them. You can meet them on the reliability of the evidence that they have. What would it take to change their mind? How did they determine that their evidence is sufficient? Why is your evidence sufficient for you but not sufficient for other people? Meet a person where they're at. Let's see, another thing that you probably shouldn't do. I could probably write a book on it.
I imagine.
So it's so tempting also when you ask a person a question and they take some time to think about it, seconds sometimes, 30 seconds. Very often we step on that silence and because it's uncomfortable, but it's one of the best things that you can do. So learning to give people enough time to think about the question and pause and not step on that silence is important. And also probably knowing when to end the talk. I think this person that I'm speaking with is getting overwhelmed. I've asked a lot of questions. They seem kind of perplexed, maybe even confused. Let's wrap it up and let's make an appointment to meet again.
Okay.
Is probably another good thing.
Cool. Excellent. Well, those are all very good. Now, this was something you learned from Boghossian, right? From his book?
Yeah.
Is this all laid out in there? This is the manual for creating atheists?
Yep, that's the name of the book.
Yeah.
He wrote it in about 2013. And sure, he had all these written, and you can get the audiobook too, so you can hear him engaging with people.
Mm.
And I thought, well, this is interesting. He's not debating their fact claims. He's asking how they know that this is true. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. I thought, okay, I got to try this. I got to go out and do this because I didn't see other examples online. So I started going out and doing it. But yeah, it all originated from his book. He, in addition to the book, he has an app called Atheos.
I was going to ask you about the app. Yes.
In fact, I think we have an essay from you.
Yes, you do.
Do we not?
Yes.
And,
yeah, and Scientology in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and we even have a dialogue, a multi-step, kind of like a choose your own adventure type of thing, a dialogue with a Scientologist. Mm-hmm. So it would be a street epistemologist talking to a Scientologist, and that example is in there. And that is a great resource.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I was going to actually segue into this on the fact that I would actually recommend a manual for creating atheists and this methodology, and I'm going to start doing that, actually, because I really should have thought of this before, to people who are wondering how to talk to their family and friends who are in destructive cults. Because I don't think the methodology is really a whole lot different from what I've been preaching for years now of tolerance and listening and not more than talking and trying to get them to tell you, they explain to you what their beliefs are and why they think that way. Whether that's Scientology or Hare Krishnas or Transcendental Meditation or Christianity, it's the same drill. And while people in destructive cults might have more extreme authoritarian controls on them, when you're talking about the belief, it's the same mechanisms. You know, because all of our brains kind of do that stuff the same way, as far as I can tell. What motivated you? You know, a lot of people have read Boghossian's book, but you went out, got a GoPro, and started doing this, right? And you must get asked, like, why, what drove you to do this, and how have you found what's been effective for you in encouraging other people to do it?
Okay. Well, I think there were a lot of things that motivated me to do it. I was just coming to grips with my atheism, I suppose. I mean, I was always a non-believer, but I didn't really identify with the label. And I think I was just recovering from going through, maybe I was even still in the angry atheist phase. I was looking at some of the relationships, family members that barely talk to me, even to this day, unfortunately, because I was aggressive. I ridiculed them. I ridiculed their beliefs. And then there was this book that said, hey, there's a better way. So it was probably somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a personal reason to do it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just like try it and see if I could mend the relationships that I've burnt the bridges on. And then upon discovering that there weren't really many examples out there, I thought, well, hey, I'm comfortable enough going out and talking to people. I'm going to do something. Let me go out and do something. And then so I guess it kind of dawned on me to just start recording it. And the other question I think was, how do I encourage other people to get involved?
What have you found effective in getting them motivated enough to get off their couch and go do it?
Okay. Well, video is powerful. Video is really compelling. When you can see a person, a total stranger, disclosing what they believe to another total stranger, and then 5 minutes later, the person pauses for 20 seconds and says, I really don't know why I think that that's true. I don't know if I could be 100% sure. There, it's so compelling. So that might be one of the most the best things that we have at our disposal is to show examples of this happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people will be joining the various groups that are out there and referring to the videos that they're seeing, not just Magnabosco videos, but other videos from people who are posting this stuff.
Yep.
It's funny because it originated from the book, and then there's the app, and then there's these videos. And some people are discovering that there's a street epistemology podcast, and then they're going to the book, and then they're going to the app, and then they're like, oh, there's videos too. So it's interesting how people are kind of, it's this mesh that's spreading out, and people are discovering it in a variety of different ways.
Right.
And again, you don't have to be on the street doing it. I think a very small percentage of people would ever feel comfortable going out with a camera and doing this. We don't need that many people doing it. 10, 20 would be great. If we had 100, that's great. We want more people doing it. I don't want to discourage people from doing it. But it's when you're on the bus and somebody makes a comment, or Thanksgiving dinner is done and you're relaxing in on the couch and your uncle makes some sort of comment. Do you ignore him, or do you respectfully engage with him about why he thinks that that's true? We need to get to the point where people are comfortable enough to gently push back and engage rather than just let these things pass.
Right. And just be really super clear here. Your uncle could be commenting about immigration, about, doesn't have to be religious in nature. Any claim
Correct.
can be challenged this way.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if you are dealing with a family member, it might be better to use this method initially on safer topics.
Right.
Avoid the politics, avoid the religion.
Right.
Ask them, they might make some claim like, I bought that red car because it gets, that might be a bad example. I bought the gray car over the red car because I thought, I heard that red cars get more speeding tickets than gray cars. That would be a great conversation to have. And he may very well be right. That would be a nice thing to learn. But he might discover that he doesn't have a good justification for it. You have enough conversations like that, they will probably start asking themselves those questions on those deeper beliefs.
Exactly. And I think that's I think that could do nothing but benefit all sides, And who knows, we might make some atheists into some true believers. I
have had some good talks with atheists who were 100% sure there's no God, and they backed off of it after 5 minute, 10 minute.
Right. Well, at least they can become true believers in street epistemology.
There you go. Some people have compared this to a cult, and
oh my God, seriously? They've compared trying to have rational discourse with people of differing ideas with a cult. Really? That's happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It's the exact. It's like I only roll my eyes maybe because it just kind of hits me a little bit because there's a prominent ex-Scientologist who's now lambasting the ex-Scientology community as being a bunch of anti-Scientology cultists. And you're just like, wow, dude, do you really not get what a cult is? Like, they just don't. It's pure PR and positioning in an effort to deride and invalidate the work that's being done, to expose abuses in the church. But so I just have to laugh because I go, what, are you kidding me with street epistemology? Really? Somebody tried that? That is awesome. I would love to do some street epistemology on them and find out where they got that idea.
We've had people use street epistemology on street epistemology. How can you be so sure that it's effective? What would it take to change your mind that this isn't working? What if this is causing harm to people? Would you stop doing it?
Wow.
These are great questions.
Wow. They are good questions to ask. I mean, the answers kind of come to my mind straight away, but I'm biased, so what can I say? I'm all about critical thinking and rational discourse, and I'm biased in the direction that that's a positive thing to do. So silly me. Okay, well, Anthony, I wanted to wrap this up here. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to be part of this. I think we've covered some good ground, and we've sort of reached the end of our time. Was there anything that we didn't cover? And specifically, I'm going to put links to your YouTube channel. Website? Is there anything else I should be linking to that people should know about?
I think it'd be best if you just linked right to the streetepistemology.com website. Okay. There are links to my work and the work of other people there, and some of the important gathering points for people who are interested in this method.
Right.
And yeah, if you can promote that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, no problem. I'm more than happy to promote this. I think it's a good thing. Okay, well, again, thank you for coming around. I hope you write a book.
Thank you.
I think that would be a good
Well,
thing.
we'll see. I'm not the best writer. I've written a few blog posts. They are on the Street Epistemology website. You can check those out. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe.
All right, yeah. I mean, practice makes perfect, and you writers are people who write, so the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. But I think you have very valuable information to share, and I think that's why I think a book from you would be a perfect complement to Boghossian's manual. Okay, this is how to do it. This is how I think to do it. Well, now you've gone out and done it for years. Mm-hmm. Here's the results, and here's what I've learned from doing this. So, yeah. Okay, cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming around. Let me just wrap up the show here by saying to everybody who's watching or listening, thank you for coming around. I'm very interested in your comments and feedback, whether it's good, bad, or sideways, on what we've talked about here. And of course, as I do with all my guests, I'll encourage Anthony to come around when this goes online this weekend and check out the comments on YouTube and maybe respond to some of them if appropriate. Because it's, engagement with people's feedback on this kind of stuff is always interesting, if nothing else. But sometimes very, very helpful too. So leave your comments, folks. Leave your reviews for me on the podcast. And as always, if you feel that this channel is educational, informative, and entertaining, consider supporting me on Patreon or throwing my love some way through PayPal. All of that helps keep the show going and allows me the time to do stuff like this. So thanks a lot. And again, Anthony, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
All right. Talk to you guys later. See you next week. Bye-bye.